You're listening to Conversations Ignite.
Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're joined by Doug Lawrence, an accomplished mentor, international best-selling author, and the founder of TalentC. Doug has over 35 years of experience in mentorships and has worked with individuals across industries from corporate leaders to veterans. He is also the co-founder of the International Mentoring Community and has been a strong advocate for integrating mentoring into personal and professional development. Doug, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, and it's good to be here.
We are glad to have you on today. So you've been involved in mentoring now for over 35 years. Can you share what initially drew you into that field and kind of how you got into the career of mentoring and how it's evolved over time?
Yeah, I certainly can. It all started with I was actually job coaching, so helping university, college students, create a resume, create a cover letter, go through the interview prep, and all that sort of stuff. And what happened was that you help two or three of them to get a job, and while they're in the workplace, something happens that they don't quite know how to deal with it. It could be conflict or something along those lines, and they would come to me and they'd say, Doug, how do we deal with these sorts of things? And so I started to head down that path where I was helping them. And what actually ended up happening was a job coaching relationship morphed itself into one that was a mentoring relationship. So I ended up where I was helping them figure out a strategy on how to deal with different sorts of things. And we got to a point where they said, Doug, you should do this for a living. We can't afford to pay you, but I'm sure somebody could. And so I started to do some market research, and I was able to determine that there was a place for mentoring just as I described it. But more importantly, there was also a place for us to take mentoring to a whole new level where we actually had mentor certification. Because when I did my market research and stuff, there was not a certification process or program in place for mentoring. And so there was a gap. And so that's what started me down that pathway. And when I first started that journey, I partnered with a company in the United States to create a certification process, knowledge driven, not so much from a competence or a practical application of mentoring concepts, but from a pure knowledge. You had to write a test, and if you passed the test, you became certified. And so that was kind of the process we went through. So that's a long answer to a short question, but that's kind of the journey that I took.
It's very cool to see how you started kind of doing like the resume process, and it kind of morphed into this whole mentoring ship. It's very cool to see that just start and kind of progress into what it's become today. Now, are there other kind of agencies like TalentC, or are you kind of the innovator of it? Are there other companies like that out there?
No, there's not. And that was the driving force that got me going down that path, was that when I was trying to figure out who my competition was, I was able to determine that other than going to a organization that was a blend of coaching and mentoring, but there was nobody that had really taken mentoring as we know it today. Nobody that had actually taken mentoring and say, okay, I'm going to create a certification, and this is the process. And as a result of that, then we'll be able to offer certified mentors to the business community and to individuals as well.
Interesting. Now, Talent C, do you also do you help businesses create mentor programs?
Yes, yes.
Since Talent C kind of offers the mentoring programs that help those organizations kind of get that program, what's the process look like of getting it set up for a company?
So that's evolved, as you can well imagine, that's evolved over time. So how I start the journey is I have the conversation with them to, kind of get a sense of whereabouts they're at and what is it that they hope to accomplish and what's the business problem that they're trying to solve where they're going to use mentoring that as part of the solution. So that, was kind of the first thing. And then what I'd like to do, and this of course because this can become a bit expensive for the organization, but what I like to do is what I call a culture assessment. So I will come in and interview employees, and what I'm looking for is this organization mentor ready? So could I walk in tomorrow and implement a mentorship program, or is there some things we need to kind of take a look at? In particular, I've I've gone in and done a culture assessment, and then as a result of that, I've recommended crucial conversations. So they didn't know how to communicate effectively, and so that was key to the implementation of the mentoring was they needed to, among other things, they needed to be able to communicate effectively. So I would bring in an outside party to run the crucial conversation training as an example, or maybe there was a period of mentoring, a period of time that mentoring needed to be provided, say, to two or three leaders in the organization before we implement mentoring. And so, there was a number of things, but the culture assessment gave us that foundation that we could build upon. And then once that's done, I typically like to do a pilot where we'll get everything and ready. We'll do the documentations and all that sort of stuff, and get that all ready. And then um, we'll do a 6-month pilot where we'll implement for a small group in the organization. And then once that's successful and we've measured how successful it is or was, then we can then roll it out organization wide. And that would also include providing training as well.
Oh, interesting. So it definitely sounds like it's a longer process or can be a longer process. It's not just an overnight kind of thing that happens. It sounds like there's different levels that you have to get to.
Yes. Short answer is yes. We could do the quick and dirty, but then I'm not. I would have a tough time with the whole determining how successful we are and all of that. It makes it difficult for us to hit those organization milestones for the mentoring program. Some of the ones that I've done more recently, we've been at a minimum 6 months to almost a year doing the pilot and doing the assessment and all that sort of stuff. And I don't. It's part of it is me as well, because I want to make sure that I'm bringing value. And if we do kind of the quick and dirty slam dunk approach, I can't guarantee that.
Yeah, it makes sense because in the long-term scheme of things, mentoring it's not meant to be a quick process. It's learning over time and learning from somebody.
That's correct. And I mean, you can do a hybrid implementation where you have um, you have people that are involved, so they're doing the what's the words I'm looking for, the soft approach to mentoring versus the where it happens on a day-to-day basis, and informal versus formal. That's the words I was looking for. Was you can you can set it up so that informally there's mentoring taking place, but you can also have it where it's more formalized, and there are you know you assign times when the mentoring needs to take place and stuff, where with the informal, it's you walk up to somebody and you say, gee, I see you're doing XYZ. I wonder what would happen if we were to change that a little bit and do you know XYB, whatever, something along those lines. And it's informal. It becomes a way of life in the organization.
Yeah, that's very very great way to say it. Now you had mentioned that you created the ISO compliant international certification for mentor program. Um, why do you think it's so important to get mentors certified?
It's so the ISO piece, that was my business partner, that he and I working together, we had created that. Um, it from my perspective, it's a business decision. Do I think that it's mandatory? It depends what it is that you want to get from when you go to define the goals and objectives of we're going to implement mentoring. What it basically boils down to is, what is it that you want to accomplish, and can you accomplish that without certification? And if not, if you do need certification, what does that look like as well? So for me, like, I've gone through my initial certification, and then I've recertified, I think, 3 times now. So every 2 years I have to recertify. Um, and it just gets better each time, because we tighten up the certification process and the steps. I, I think it's one of those. It's the best way to describe it is, do you want a Chev or do you want a Cadillac? And that's one way to take a look at, certainly at it. And the other aspect is that, um, can I get to where I want to get to with my organization without certifying mentors? And you don't have to certify everyone. You can certify 2 or 3 people so that they they're able to kind of do train the trainer type of an approach, and actually mentor people through the certification process. And we have that in, certainly that's already built into the program that we provide, but um, doesn't have to be.
I'm seeing kind of a reoccurring theme through everything you're telling me, and it sounds like the programs aren't all one size fits all, and you kind of have to tailor it to the needs of your business and how what the outcomes you want.
Yeah, that's yeah. I don't recommend the slam dunk, whatever you've got, throw it in. And I also, um, I've been brought in to kind of clean things up a bit, but I don't. What I saw when I went in to do that was that they had a cookie cutter approach. They had a program developed and created that was the organization, the mentoring organization that was going to implement this program. They had this already built, and it was a matter, we're just going to come in and we'll implement this. And that's what they did. And they didn't take into account what were the pain points the organization was trying to address with mentoring. And then on top of that, the training that was provided was not aligned with anything else. And so as a result, at the end of the first year, things kind of the train went off the track, so to speak. And they brought me in, and what we did was we cleaned up the training so that it was something that was number one, more in tune with what it is what their goals and objectives were. But more importantly, was that it was customized to the organization and its business issues that they were trying to solve.
Yeah, I think that customization really, it sounds like it really helps in what you're doing with companies.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Now you have a new book that's coming out, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes, I have Grief, the Silent Pandemic is due to be released on the 20th of April.
Now that kind of focuses on the interaction of mentoring and mental health, correct?
And grief.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So You Are Not Alone, which was my second book, which is the precursor to the grief book. You Are Not Alone is more aligned with mentoring and mental health and how mentoring can be part of the support structure.
Yeah, I was just about to ask. Can you tell us about how mentoring can be used to kind of support mental well-being, mental health well-being, and kind of deal with grief?
Yes, I certainly I can. So the how it works is that so you and I are seeing a counselor, a social worker, any one of the professionals, and so we go for our regular appointment, and then at the end of the appointment, the doctor or the social worker says, "Okay, I need to see you in 4 to 6 months." And so you have that gap of 4 to 6 months where all of a sudden now, if something happens and you have, you know, a trigger that takes place that you need help with, you've got this 4 to 6 month gap. And how mentoring works is with mentoring, you walk beside the person on their healing journey, and you're there to guide, but you don't diagnose, you don't, prescribe or anything like that. You're there primarily to help that individual. Um, One of the comments that in one of the um, engagements that I've been involved in, where I've been brought in and I'm mentoring people that are dealing or struggling with mental health issues. The biggest thing is that I listen and I hear what their issues are. I don't tell them how to fix them because they need to own that. And I'm also there to, sort of make sure that we stay on track, that we don't fall off. And the other part that is, so listening and hearing are very important. Understanding that I'm non judgmental and that I'm also very much in tune to delivering whatever services I offer in a confidential fashion. And that I also create that safe place for conversations to take place. So there's all those elements that fall into place that mentoring, um, the reason mentoring works so well is because it it's all about the listening and the hearing part, listening and hearing what this person is saying, and also to be able to recognize, when you maybe need to have a conversation with um, a psychologist or a psychiatrist, where you need to be able to hand off to that professional because that's not in your wheelhouse whatsoever.
I love the part where you said that they're kind of there beside them through the whole journey. It's so important because, like you said, maybe your psychiatrist, whoever you're seeing, they can't see you for a while. It's you need that support system, that person that's there for you.
And the other thing that that we're seeing taking place is that um, you go for your, as I call it, professional treatment and that. So psychologists, psychiatrists, and all of those things, and you're going for that. What happens when you go to, as I call it, assimilate back into society where you've now, you've had some help, you've had where you've learned coping mechanisms to deal with, with your mental well-being. You need to have that warm handoff from, from the medical professionals to where you are now in life as a whole. You need to have that warm handoff, and that's where the mentor comes into play for that particular part of your healing journey as well.
Yeah. Now you've also worked with military veterans as well. Um, how is it? How do they kind of help? Like, how can mentoring help transition like that lifestyle back into like a civilian lifestyle?
A large part of it, and I work with um, U.S. military individuals. I help them transition from, as you mentioned, from service to civilian life. And the big thing is, as it is with most times that I'm dealing with somebody in the mental health space, and the grief side of the story as well. But most of the time that I have with dealing with or working with the service people, it's just listening and hearing what they've been through and where they want to go, what their goals and objectives are, and just providing them with the reassurance that there are things that they can do, and that I'm there to walk beside them as they continue their healing journey. And there are some pretty scary mental health stories that come out of the stuff that I've been doing with some of them. The biggest thing that I've found so far is to just let them know that I'm there as part of one of their coping mechanisms for them and how they're dealing with, with their mental health, mental well-being.
Yeah, it sounds like it goes back to a lot of support, just making sure you're really there for them. Now you've also created the employee mental health mentoring community. How do you think that businesses can best support their employees' mental health, kind of while integrating mentoring programs into their existing culture?
Well, the biggest thing that I've found, and I've had this happen where an organization would say, we've got this employee and we think that they may have some mental health issues, and they're kind of exhibiting some sort of symptoms of some sort. They don't really know for sure, and it's obviously it's not my place to diagnose. But what I can do is suggest that we have a conversation with the employer or the organization does, and we can let them experience mentoring from a mental health perspective. And it may be just the right amount of coping mechanisms that they need in order to be able to sort of get themselves figured out, so to speak, and be able to address or deal with the whatever mental health issues they're trying to deal with at that particular time. Most organizations do not have. They rely on their, what is it, their employee program, health program, which typically has certain amount of counseling and stuff built into the program. The organization is relying on the external help to take care of the issue instead of, it's almost like, what I typically will say to somebody is that, um, I hear that, I hear in your voice that you may be struggling and stuff like that. I want you to think about opening that closet door and extending your hand and asking for help, and ask for help from your organization to be able to say, I'm part of your family here. You need to help me in my fight or my battle with mental health and mental well-being. And what I found was that most organizations, or certainly a lot of them, would rather close that closet door and stay hidden in behind there, because number one, they don't know how to deal with it. Number two, they don't really want to have to deal with it. They would rather hand that off to somebody else. But the longer that they leave, the more difficult it becomes for that employee to be able to deal with it and put coping mechanisms into place.
Wow, it's amazing just how much you and what your organizations do can just really help companies build. Because like you said, a lot of companies don't even care. They don't want to care. But when you have those strong mentoring programs and you're able to talk about mental health, it's only going to create a better environment for that company.
Yeah, it's one, if you're looking for longevity of employees, the more that you invest in their mental health and mental well-being, the longer they're going to be around to, help you achieve whatever your goals and objectives as an organization are.
Yeah, that's exactly true. Now, as somebody who has worked with people from all walks of life, you've worked with military veterans to business leaders. What qualities do you believe make a good mentor?
Transparency, um, and the other part is the transparency. Transparency is definitely at the high end of the list, but also you need to be humble. Um, I find, especially dealing with mental health and mentoring, I find that I have to be comfortable in my own skin to be able to, for me to share what it is that I have dealt with, and especially when it comes, you know, I have a family member who had issues with alcohol, and so if I'm sitting down to have a conversation with somebody and the company has maybe identified this person, as their coping mechanism, they use alcohol. I can relate. So I'm in a position where I can help that employee see that, oh well, he's made it down the road, and he's been able to get back on track and all of that, and he shared it with me, so I'm going to share with him what it is that I'm struggling with and what I'm dealing with. Probably one of the best examples was, um, mentoring a young entrepreneur, and very first meeting that we have, I indicate that I share some of the things that had occurred to me, with me, whatever. Um, and as a result of my sharing, the employee said you could just sort of see the wheels turning, where it was, well, he shared, so I guess maybe I should share. And they opened up, and they actually shared that they were struggling with 3 or 4 different mental health challenges, and they were finding it difficult for them to grow their business because this was impacting their ability to grow the business and to make sound business decisions in doing so.
Wow, yeah, that transparency part, that sounds like it's really, really important, especially just and really having people that you can relate to.
Yeah, that's the big thing. And, coming back to the question of, what do you look for in a good mentor? It's that individual that is very humble and, is willing to open up and share. And, some of the other things that I look for is the ability to communicate effectively on top of all that other stuff. But it's building those trusted relationships that is really critical.
Yeah, it really sounds like you're looking like when you're looking for somebody, they have to really care about people and not about personal gain to themselves. It's really that helping that other person out.
Exactly. Yeah. Putting others before you put yourself, so to speak, right? And it's you will find that you will have great success as a mentor if you can take and put all those things into the jar of who you are as a mentor. And then, you add on top of that, you add the grief mentoring, which takes it to a different level as well, and becomes just that much more challenging as a mentor to make a difference in that person's life.
Yeah, wow. Now, you obviously have a very diverse career. How do you balance mentoring with all the other roles that you have, like being an author, speaking, doing volunteer work? How do you how do you balance it all?
I try to, what I try to do is allocate time. So, like when you mentioned writing, so to write the books and stuff that I've done, I have set aside time in my calendar to do just that, to write. And sometimes the inspiration isn't there. And so you have to park that particular task to the side and then maybe go and work on something else so that you don't become totally stagnant and you're able to continue to move forward. So, definitely, definitely that part. And then for me too, sometimes all I need is I I need a colleague to call me up and say, "Do you have time to go for a coffee?" or "Can I drop by and just have a chat?" And it's those little breaks like that and the reassurance that you get from others that, you know, time with you is quality time and therefore, I want to invest in you as well. So, that's certainly part of that whole journey as well.
What that Yeah, that's a great perspective, and especially for people that are listening, hopefully they can take some of that away. Now you've also authored The Gift of Mentoring. Um, and we talked about your new book that's getting ready to come out. What are some key messages that you want readers to kind of take away from what you're writing?
So, the gift of mentoring, the message that we would take away from that was that this is mentoring 101, so to speak, is how it was written. And if you're interested in mentoring in whatever fashion it is, it's a book that I recommend that you read because it takes you through, the basics of mentoring. And I know the feedback I got from readers was just that it made a difference. Excuse me, it made a difference for them in understanding mentoring the processes, but more importantly, it also helped them understand what the business value was for mentoring.
Oh, wow. Now, you've worked with a variety of different people throughout your career. You've worked with everybody from corporate leaders to veterans. What's the most important lesson that you've learned from mentoring individuals from different backgrounds?
I would have to say everyone is unique. And as a mentor, I need to be able to determine what is it that is unique about that individual and then customize how I'm going to deal with that particular individual so that they get the value that they're looking for in a mentoring relationship with me. And conversely, if they are connecting with somebody else, they go down that same path as well.
Yeah, it's really important that people understand every person is not the same. I feel like a lot of people don't get that, and a lot of people think that they can talk to me or you like they would talk to somebody else. And I've really come across that over the years, and really have, when you really try to understand somebody and understand they're different, it that can really have an impact.
Yeah, and you know that we all have differences, and those are the things that I look to as learning opportunities. So I get to learn about you as an individual. You get to learn about me, and I guess that's kind of the sort of fits with the definition of mentoring, which is, a trusted relationship where both the mentor and the mentee learn and grow together. So you're going on a journey together to, learn and grow together personally and professionally. So I'm going to I'm going to have growth from a career perspective, but I'm also going to have growth as a result of my personal growth. So I usually go, self-esteem, self-confidence, self-worth, self-doubt, all the selves as I call them, that, that's being able to focus on those elements as well is also part of the whole mentoring process.
Yeah, it's important. Now, when somebody's becoming a mentor, um, obviously there's some learning processes to it, but what kind of mistakes do people kind of make at first when they're first getting into being a mentor?
The biggest one is telling versus asking. So with mentoring, I use what they call the Socratic method, which is asking a series of questions to guide your mentee, the person you're mentoring, guide them to the answer. It's not to tell, because as soon as you start telling, well, you should do this or you should do that, you've shifted the accountability for the outcome is now shifted away from that person, and you've assumed ownership of that. And so that's probably one of the biggest ones. One of the other ones that I've always found is the ability or inability to build a trusted relationship. Because if you that's the foundation for the mentoring process is the trusted relationship. And so if I can't build the trust, I'm going to struggle being successful as a mentor and in being able to help this person.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because if that mentee can't trust the mentor, then it's never going to work out.
No, it won't.
Now, um, how do you approach mentoring, or how does a mentor approach? s- So when somebody is getting ready to go into like a mentoring program, and they're doubtful, skeptical that it's gonna work, but they kind of want to give it a try, but they don't know. How do you approach that?
I what I typically will do is sit them down and say, And it depends on the reason that they're there. If this is something they've determined on their own volition that they want to give it a try, kick the tires and all that sort of, that's one thing. The other is the organization has decreed that we're going to implement mentoring and everybody has to participate and become involved in that process. So there's, a number of different pathways to take a look at. How I would typically approach it is, tell me what you know about mentoring. And okay, what do you hope to get from a mentoring relationship? What are some of the things that you hope to get from our time that we're going to spend together? Um, and then sort of take it from there. So one of the things to think about is that in our relationship that we're going to build some trust, and part of building that trust is being able to share some things that I've encountered through my lived experience, some things that I've encountered, such as that I had a family member who you know whose coping mechanism was alcohol. And to be truthfully honest, I will also share as I was dealing with. I'm a retired Royal Canadian Mounted Police officer, and so as a result of my time in the service, I encountered a number of different situations where um, my mental health, mental well-being was challenged, and my coping mechanism was a bottle of Scotch whiskey. And so I'd come home from a traumatic, event, and I'd go to my cabinet where I stored all my liquor, and I'd grab a bottle, throw the lid away, and I would sit on the couch or the easy chair, and I would drink until I thought I had figured the world out, and then I would pass out or go to bed. And alcohol became the crutch that I used. And so I would share that story. And as long as it's a relevant story, that's the important thing to think about. But I would share that story with the person that I'm spending time with.
Wow, what an amazing journey. Um, Now, in your experience, what are the most significant challenges businesses face when kind of integrating mentoring into their kind of corporate structure?
The most important one is that they have not identified a business goal or objective. So what's the bit I always say, what's your business problem that you're trying to solve using mentoring? And that's probably the biggest thing that, would stand out for me. Um, and typically the best approach for organizations that you sort of see them wavering, they're not quite sure, do we want to spend the money to implement, and what are the results that we're going to achieve? What I see that when you have that doubt from the organization, even at a high level, you need to sit them down and go through and sort of say, here are the possibilities as far as of what we may be able to accomplish by implementing mentoring, but the only way we're going to be able to guarantee success is if all of us, the decision makers, as well as most of the employees, is to get them to sort of to buy in and agree on what it is we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, that buy-in, like you said. Now, for anybody that's out there listening right now, what are some signs that somebody, maybe somebody you know or a team member, what are some signs that they might be struggling mentally?
You'll find the biggest one that stands out is changes in behavior. And those are ones that, somebody who was, normally jovial, great person to talk with, all of those things. All of a sudden now you take the chalk brush and you wipe all that clean, and you have before you an individual that is struggling having a meaningful conversation, and struggles with the whole aspect of excuse me, struggling with the whole aspect of acceptable behavior more than anything else, I think is what it is. And then you're going to have signs of depression. You're going to have, hopefully not, but potentially somebody who is uh, giving off or sending messages about, thinking of death by suicide. And one of the things that I highly recommend to organizations is to send your employees on a suicide prevention course. I've done two or three of them now, and I feel a whole lot better in being able to provide the support that an employee would need or wants, simply because of those training programs that are out there.
Now, if an individual sees that happening to somebody, how do they go about helping that person? Do they help the person? Do they let somebody know? How would they go about getting that person help?
The most important thing, and it depends on what it is. So if you have suicidal tendencies or ideas, um, that's where you need to get professional help for sure. And that can be as simple as going, if you don't have a medical personnel in your organization that you can go to, you can always, certainly reach out to a doctor or the employee program and be able to say, I think, that Johnny's having some challenges or difficulties. And, I think we should maybe take a look at and this is just my observations, because you don't want to get into a situation where you try to diagnose that employee, because that should be left for the professionals to do.
Awesome, awesome advice. Now, what has been one of the most rewarding moments of your career as a mentor?
It would be, I had worked with a young lady for a number of years, and eventually uh, worked with, she got engaged and got married. And um, I had spent some time working with her husband as well. But I got invited to their wedding, and uh, totally out of the blue, didn't know. All of a sudden, I get this wedding invitation. And so at the wedding, at the reception that I went to, I asked her, I said, why did you feel that you needed to, and that's kind of not the right words to use, but why did you extend the invitation for me to come to your wedding? And she brought her husband over, and they both said, we could not imagine having a wedding without you being at it, because of all the things that you've done for us with the mentoring and all of those things. And that's why it was important to us for you to be part of our special day. And I thought, I don't need any thank yous or anything else after this. This was yeah, it was well worth it.
That's very awesome. It must be really rewarding when you see somebody succeed.
Yeah, and it does, excuse me, it may only be just a little tiny glimpses of success and stuff like that. I'm starting to see right now, because of the work I'm doing in the grief space, I'm seeing more and more where we're able to give people the coping mechanisms and the tools that they need to be able to manage their grief, and as well to be able to help others manage their grief as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. If you could go back to when you first started out this mentoring journey, what's some advice that you would give yourself now?
start sooner. When I think of it, it's kind of like everything else, right? Is if we only had the knowledge that we had, 10 or 15 years ago, if I could take all the lived experiences and stuff that I garnered over that time period and bring it forward to today, um, the world would be a better place to be. Is kind of the short answer, I guess.
That's awesome. So yeah, starting sooner. That's a great way, great way of looking at it. Now, what's the biggest misconception that people have about mentoring?
The biggest one is that it is purely career driven, and it's not. Mentoring is a two-way trusted relationship, and it's personal and professional growth. So it's the two pieces. The I would have to say the larger percentage of people that I mentor, I'm mentoring them because of the personal growth. And now it's evolved to personal growth and mental health and grief. Those are now becoming more and more of the areas that mentoring is starting to, certainly that I'm focusing on. So it would be those.
I can imagine that, kind of like you said, the misconception would be, business mentoring. But I kind of believe that, when you personally mentor, like for personal growth, that can only help in maybe your professional career.
I agree 100%. Yeah, it's certainly because we were talking about self esteem, self growth, all of those. Those are all building blocks that we need as individuals to be successful in an organization. And to not have those and to not get that experience from a mentor, it's going to make things a little bit more challenging for you to be successful in that organization.
Yeah. Now, you have had a very successful career. You've done many different things. How would you personally describe success?
For me, success is when I see others that I have spent time with able to able to build. They're able to build the foundation they need to be successful. So it's primarily, I guess, the quick and easy answer is it's not about me, it's about everyone else. So I'm very much focused on making sure that your needs are being met and that, we've determined how we're going to measure your success, and together we're going to work at getting us to that goal line and being able to do it that way. It's I went through an exercise to determine whereabouts I was life wise. And one of the things that came out of that exercise was it was determined or found that I'm a healer and I help others as much as I can, but my healing gets better and gets my capabilities get bigger because of my experiences that I've had and that I continue to have as a result of applying the knowledge that I was gaining, you know, 3 or 4 years ago or 5 or 10 years ago. But I've been able to garner that knowledge base and put it into practice in order to be able to not only help others but also to help myself.
I really love how you kind of define success as not only you being successful, but the people around you being successful as well. That's a very unique way of looking at it, and I don't think a lot of people do look at it that way.
No, no, definitely not. they need to experience the mentoring world.
It has been such a pleasure to have you on today. If anybody would like to learn more about your company or follow you, do you have a website or any social media?
I do. Website is www.TalentC, so the word talent with the letter C on the end.ca. You can send me a message through the website. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so just go in and search and find my profile, and you can direct message me through LinkedIn. But just as easily, you can send me an email message at Doug.Lawrence, and that's LAWRENCE at TalentC, so the word talent with the letter C on the end.ca, and I'll get back to you as quickly as I can.
Like I said, Doug, thank you so much for being on. It has been such a pleasure. It's been a great conversation. I love the work that you started out. I love how your career kind of progressed. It's great what you're doing out there in the mentor world, and I just can't thank you enough.
Well, thank you for this wonderful opportunity.
It was our pleasure to have you on, and hopefully we can chat again sometime soon.
Yes, I would like that.
Awesome. Well, everybody, I'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to Conversations Ignite. See you next time.